Pete Hegseth fights back and even uses his mom, or his mom, of course, volunteered to defend him. And it's riveting video. You're going to see every bit of it. And what's really behind this? Is this about Pete Hegseth? Or is this about America First policy? We'll give you all the facts and we'll let you decide. Also, Scott Jennings, once again, just blows up on CNN last night. And the anchor, Abby Phillips, actually pushes back on some criticism of her show. We're going to give you those details. And it just happened like 30 minutes ago. Charlemagne on The View, mixing it up with Whoopi Goldberg, a big time throwdown, and you're going to see it. We'll watch it together. And finally, oh, my Lord, Joe Biden falls asleep in Africa. Who's surprised about that? But what might surprise you is this president's priorities, handing over $1 billion to Angola because climate change, while American citizens are freezing to death in tents in North Carolina. Nothing funny about that, but we'll lay it all out for you coming up right now. We are brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. For watching our daily live stream right now with our growing audience. We're so thrilled and proud to be here for you and proud of the community that we're building. Give us a thumbs up here so we can draw attention to what we're doing and make sure you engage with each other in that chat room. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, because we love you being a part of our daily show here. Thank you so much for that. I want you to open an IRA in gold with Birch Gold. And if you do, you'll get free silver shipped directly to your home. That's right, free silver. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And it's the only time of the year that Birch Gold gives away a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased. And the best part is, well, you don't actually have to pay a penny out of pocket. All you need to do is simply convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And then Birch Gold will send you free silver coins directly to your home. Now, you might be thinking, why do I need to diversify to gold? Hey, my guy's headed to D.C. He's going to be in the White House for 4 years. Everything's fine. Well, the fact is, an administration trying to reverse a $36 trillion national debt in just 4 years, it's not easy. You think about that old legend of pushing the boulder up the hill. Yeah, it's going to take a while. So we have a huge amount to pay just on the interest alone, not to mention the principal. Take action now. Text Larry to 989898 before December 18th and get a free info kit on gold and claim your eligibility for free silver on qualifying purchases from Birch Gold. Do this before December 18th. Again, text Larry to 989898 for peace of mind that lasts longer than just 4 years. All right, you may be reading in the mainstream propaganda media outlets that Pete Hegseth is done. He's finished. He's kaput. I mean, they have all these anonymously sourced articles out there claiming that he was misbehaving behind the scenes at Fox News, that he misappropriated or at least spent way too much money and had bad accounting over at his foundation for veterans, and that he was drinking on the job. Of course, nobody puts their names to these allegations, but doesn't matter because the media is doing what they do. They're Kavanaughing Pete Hegseth, or at least they're attempting to Kavanaugh him. So he's dead, right? It's over. It's finished. Not so fast, my friend. This morning on Fox and Friends, Pete Hegseth's mom came out specifically to defend her son. I don't think she's ever done media before in her life. Why is Pete Hegseth's mom involved? Well, because one of the articles sliming her son actually got a hold of an email that she had personally sent, a private correspondence via email to her son. Somehow this publication got a hold of it. And well, she described exactly what the media did to her. Watch this performance on Fox and Friends this morning, and then we'll discuss.
You never in a million years thought you would be doing this.
No.
Because you didn't realize that this email you wrote in 2018, somebody leaked it to the New York Times.
Correct.
And they printed it.
Correct.
I'm going to read part of it. You say, this is to Pete during the 2018 divorce. You say, I have no respect for any man that belittles, lies, cheats, and sleeps around. And you go on and say, you are that man and have been for years. And as your mother, it pains me and embarrasses me to say that, but it is a sad, sad truth. You say, we still love you, but we are broken by your behavior and your lack of character. Mm-hmm. When you wrote that, What's the backstory? What was going on that made you so angry you wanted to write that?
Well, I will tell that story in a moment, but let me make two statements first. And one is to President Trump. And I want to say thank you for your belief in my son. We all believe in him. We really believe that he is not that man he was 7 years ago. I'm not that mother. And I hope people will hear that story today and the truth of that story. So the other thing I want to say is I am here to tell the truth. To tell the truth to the American people and tell the truth to the senators on the Hill, right, especially our female senators. I really hope that you will not listen to the media and that you will listen to Pete.
Well, and you're here to tell us, because you are in the news now. So why did you write that email in 2018?
Right. Well, what
was going on?
Right. Let's go back 7 years, which if we all went back 7 years, we would see that maybe we were not the people we are today. But they were going through, Pete and his wife at the time were going through a very difficult divorce. It was a very emotional time, and I'm sure many of you across the country understand how difficult divorce is on a family. There's emotions. We say things, and I wrote that in haste. I wrote that with deep emotions. I wrote that as a parent, and about 2 hours later, my husband tells me I should think through things a little bit more, but Pete and I are both very passionate people. I wrote that out of love. And about 2 hours later, I retracted it with an apology email, but nobody's seen that. So it was a difficult time. I want to say something about the media. And part of today is to discredit the media and how they operate. When they contact you, I let a few phone calls go, but then they call you and say they threaten you. That's the first thing they do. Right. They say, unless you make a statement, we will publish it as is. And I think that's a despicable way to treat anyone. Threats are dangerous, and they're hard on families.
So to recap, you were angry about what was going on, his behavior during the divorce.
Right.
And so you wrote that email. And then, a couple hours later, you apologized, and you guys talked, and you worked it out?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Pete and I are very close today. In fact, our whole family is very tight-knit. But I think that we as parents, we always parent.
No, I get it.
I mean, and that was 7 years ago. I want to talk in a minute about who Pete is today.
Right. There are, and you wanted to come on to talk a little bit, and you mentioned a moment ago, the media scrutiny. There are allegations of sexual assault, excessive alcohol use, infidelity, financial mismanagement. As a parent, that's really it's hard to hear.
Right. Well, our job as parents are to correct. They are to speak truth. And I am a passionate person like Pete, and sometimes emotional words come out. I don't believe any of that is true, any of it. And I'm here. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today if I didn't believe that about my son.
Right. How's the family holding up?
Oh, we're okay. We have a deep, deep faith, not only in each other, but in God. And our friends have been amazing. The support we've been receiving has been amazing. So we're trusting in our God and in our faith and in our family.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to people who have read the stuff about Pete or heard the stuff about Pete? You're here, you said he has changed.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you convince people of that? Okay,
well, I start with 4 things. First, I have a very intelligent son. I have a leader son. I've known that since he was 2. He went to Princeton and Harvard. By the way, he returned the Harvard diploma, but I wouldn't let him return the Princeton because I worked too hard for that one. So that one's going to stay. That's on his wall. He's written 2 New York Times bestsellers. What mother can say that? And one of them is about war and defense. So he already has a playbook. So you talk about experience. He's also put his life on the line twice overseas
Right.
for our country, one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. I'm a very proud Blue Star mom. There it is right there. And he's still a warrior. And that's why he's still fighting. That's why we're all still fighting, because we believe in the good.
You know, and
All right, let me jump in here. That's amazing. That's Pete Hegseth's mom, and I don't think she, like I said, I don't think she's ever done media before. I don't think she's ever been on camera before. If you go on television like this for the first time, one of three things happens. Either you have a ton of media training, and I mean a ton of media training, and you can come across that genuine and address the camera directly, talk specifically to that person, not to the person who's interviewing you. That comes from training, or the second thing that can happen is it comes from you because you're just a genuine person and you're just being honest and you're just being you and you're being natural, and what you see is what you get. The third thing that can happen if you go on the air and you've never been on TV before is you're a complete and total mess and a disaster. We can exclude that one because that was not a mess or a disaster. So that's either someone who has had extensive media training. I don't think that's the case. Or that's just a completely genuine human being who just communicated directly, well, to whoever she was talking to. And let's talk about that for a second. Who was she just talking to? You noticed how many times she looked directly at the camera, just like this. See, when I do this show, I look directly into the camera because I want to be talking to you, not the hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be clicking on it. This isn't about a mass audience. This is intimate. I am talking to you. That's right, you. We are having a one-on-one conversation. That's how this works. And that's what Mrs. Hegseth just did. The question is, who was it she was talking to? Was she talking to a person in their living room to assure them that if Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense, it's going to be okay? Don't believe the things you're hearing about him? Maybe. Was she talking to that senator who is on the fence right now, who isn't sure what to do, who needs some reassurance with their vote? Possibly. Or more likely, she was talking to a man sitting down in Mar-a-Lago who is maybe concerned that Pete Hegseth is going to harm his chances for his transition and for his new presidency on day one. That in some way, this is going to become a very public and political battle, and he's got to pick his political battles very wisely. And so maybe he's starting to get cold feet. Maybe he's starting to look at plan B if Pete Hegseth doesn't have the votes in the Senate. Maybe she was talking directly to that man saying, don't worry, my son's a warrior. My son's going to fight. He's going to take on this political battle so you don't have to. Could be all of the above, by the way. But you just saw a masterclass in political communications by someone who's never done it before. That's why I tend to think this is just a genuine human being who is speaking from the heart and being cool and calm and confident in how she's defending and protecting and going on the offense against the media. Did you hear that? They threatened her. They threatened her. We obtained a private correspondence that you sent to your son, and we're going to publish it. Now, we can let you say something about it if you'd like, but either way, it's going to be published. They're despicable people, these people in the media. And that attack, what you just saw, that reaction to the attack from the media may be part of why Pete Hegseth is going to win this battle. I'm going to lay out their strategy for you right now. You just saw part of it from this morning with Pete's mom. The second part of the strategy, this is Pete Hegseth speaking to reporters as he's making his way through the Senate office building, talking to senators and trying to shore up his support.
Have you had any conversations with the president-elect about replacing you with Governor DeSantis?
I spoke to the president-elect this morning. He said, keep going, keep fighting. Behind you all the way.
So you're in this all the way.
Why would I back down? I've always been a fighter. I'm here for the more fighters. This is personal passion for me.
You're not withdrawing your name from consideration, just to be
We're
clear.
meeting all day with senators.
I know your mom was just on Fox. She says that you are a changed.
Oh, there you go. He went down a corridor that a reporter is not allowed to go down. But you heard it right there. I just spoke with President Trump this morning, And I told him that I'm going to keep fighting this. And Mr. Trump told me, keep going, keep fighting. You also heard the question having to do with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, why is his name popping up? Well, because there are reports right now that Donald Trump is openly speaking about what his plan B might be, and that could be Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who is a Navy veteran, to become a replacement for Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, should he need a replacement. Interesting. More on that story in just a moment. But first, let's also look at Pete Hegseth's social media campaign as he's fighting this fight, yes, through electronic media like you just saw on cable news with Fox and Friends, in the corridors of the Senate, where the real fight is taking place right now, meeting with senators who might be on the fence, and then on social media. That is where much of this conversation is happening. He tweeted this out this morning. I'm doing this for the war fighters, not the warmongers. Remember that. We're going to come back to that in a minute. The left is afraid of disruptors and change agents. They are afraid of Donald Trump. He tagged Donald Trump to make sure that Donald Trump saw this, and me. So they smear with fake anonymous sources and BS stories. They don't want truth. Our warriors never back down. Neither will I. And he accompanied that tweet, that post on X, with a picture of himself in country with warriors that he literally fought America's war with. This is dated from 2005. All right. How else are they trying to smear him? Well, there was an anonymously sourced story that was picked up by one or two news outlets that claim that he appeared on set at Fox News and often appeared at work drunk with alcohol on his breath. And at functions, he was seen overindulging with alcohol. And within an hour, his colleagues, current and former at Fox News, called bullshit on that story. Dan Bongino, a former coworker at Fox News, said, I worked with Pete for years. This is absolute, well, as I just said, BS. He's not the only one. Will Cain, who was his co-host on the sofa on Fox and Friends Weekend. Your story is, well, it's not bullshit, according to Will Cain. It's horse. But pick your barnyard animal. Either way, the ending result in defecation appears to be the perfect description for this story. Put my name on it, on the record. It'll be your only on the record source. Signed, the guy who sat next to him for 8 hours every week for 5 hours starting at 6 a.m. And by the way, if I could, I never worked with Pete Hegseth, but I can tell you this, as a fellow morning show host, I do radio 4 hours every day from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday. It's different than doing a morning show on television. In some ways, it's easier. In some ways, it's harder. The easy part is you don't have to see me, so I can look like hell when I do radio, which I do often. But you cannot do that job. You cannot properly function if you're inebriated. And every person you work with will know. Every single person I assure you, it is too critical of a job. It is too fast-paced, and you are too on the spot at any given moment. Your brain has to function. Your entirety has to function. And if you're inebriated, it's lights out. People will know within a day. It's funny. In Washington, D.C., just this week, an afternoon evening anchor was caught slurring his words on NBC, on the local. And that's what's pretty ironic here with NBC News, because it was a local, I believe, NBC affiliate, where an anchor was seen slurring his words, incapable of reading the teleprompter. And it appeared as though he was inebriated. This guy has a history of being drunk. He was arrested for a DUI 10 years ago. They've now pulled him off the air, and he's on a leave of absence. All right. So this is not the kind of thing you can easily hide, especially if you're doing mornings. And Will Cain sort of reemphasizes that. There are more of these Fox News employees. As I said, Dan Bongino. Oh, I already had that one. Hang on. I've got more. I thought, oh, I deleted the wrong one. Hang on. I'll get to it. I'll do it in real time. Don't worry about it. Here we go. Kyle Becker, you might know him as an ex-influencer right now, social media influencer, but he used to work as an associate producer and writer at Fox News. I've known Kyle for years and years and years, back to IJ Review days. He said, I worked with Pete Hegseth numerous times, never got the impression he was drunk. No bloodshot eyes, no slurred speech, no disheveled appearance, no wobbly gait, nothing. He is also calling BS on the story. Joey Jones, another guy who shared that couch with Pete Hegseth. I don't drink. I'm also, by the way, a fellow military veteran who lost his limbs in service to this nation. I'm disgusted by the smell of alcohol on someone's breath. I've never, ever seen Pete drink like that and have never smelled alcohol on his breath at work. These hit pieces are getting laughable. Nicole Sapphire, I routinely sat on the couch with Pete Hegseth for 8 years. Not once did I suspect he had consumed anything other than an egg sandwich and coffee before going on the air. Brianna Morello, former Fox producer, never heard of this in my life. Everyone spoke highly of him and still does till this day. Notice the employees are anonymous. And also Rachel Campos Duffy, whose husband, by the way, Sean Duffy, is in line to be Secretary of Transportation. She is also the co-host on Fox and Friends Weekend. She also said this story is BS. What's amazing is each and every one of those Fox News employees that I just told you about, not one of them was asked for comment about Pete Hegseth. NBC News had this story and had anonymous so-called employees at Fox News or former employees at Fox News who said this about Pete Hegseth. They don't have to put their name on the line. They don't have to put their reputation on the line. They just say this thing anonymously and it gets published. But NBC News didn't reach out to any other coworker at Fox News to say, hey, we've got a coworker who says this about Pete Hegseth. Is that your experience too? Or if they did and the person denied it, it didn't make its way into the article. Funny how that works, isn't it? If the Trump transition team decides to pull Pete Hegseth, or even worse, if Republican senators decide not to support Pete Hegseth because of an anonymous source story that says that he was drunk on the job, well, then forget about it for the future. Because anytime any propaganda news outlet like NBC News wants to spike a person working for the Trump administration or a proposed employee for the Trump administration, anytime they want to kill that nomination or ruin someone's life, this is all they got to do. By the way, I'm pretty sure I can find lots of people who have worked on Capitol Hill in Senate offices who can anonymously say that the very senators who are going to be voting on Pete Hegseth's nomination have been drinking on the job. Doesn't matter if they have or not. I can find Senate staffers who will anonymously say that they did. I would love for the United States Senate and people at NBC News, for that matter, to be held up to the very same scrutiny that Pete Hegseth is being held up to. See, that's where this fight is right now. This is about a media slam. And it's also about these Republican senators, the ones who were on the fence, the ones, and you don't know their names yet. No, you don't. But the ones who are not coming out saying, I don't believe any of this. And until somebody goes on the record during the confirmation hearing and will swear under oath that this has happened, I'm going to ignore it and pretend that it's the same Brett Kavanaugh stuff that we had several years ago. Let's talk about those senators for a minute. As I mentioned, there's a story being floated around that Trump is considering Ron DeSantis. Now, I don't believe this story. It might be true. I just personally don't believe it. And I feel like you come here for my opinion on things. Here's why. If Ron DeSantis wants to run for president in 2028, this is the last thing he'll want to do. Now, listen, if for some reason Pete Hegseth does not become the Secretary of Defense and Ron DeSantis ends up taking the job, what I'm telling you is that's an indication that Ron DeSantis is not looking to run for president in 2028. He's looking to run many years from now. All right. If he decides to be Secretary of Defense, it's because he's changed his plans and he's not looking at the White House 4 years from now. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, can you show me anybody who has moved from Secretary of Defense to the President of the United States? Anybody in our history? I can't think of anyone. Secretary of State, sure. Or at the very least, you move from Secretary of State to be the nominee for president. You get your chance. But do you know anyone who's been able to move from the peg? And then why do I say this? Here's why. Because Secretary of Defense, unlike other cabinet positions, is, well, a real job. No offense to the Secretary of State, no offense to Secretary of Transportation, no offense to Secretary of Commerce, but Secretary of Defense is a hell of a job. It is a hands-on job. It is a major job. You don't take that job because you're trying to pad your resume so you can run for president in a few years. Sorry, Senator Marco Rubio, but we all see what you're doing here, okay? You're just trying to add this to the resume, so you're the perfect candidate for president. It's fine. It's no secret you want to be president. For God's sake, you literally ran for president several years ago. So clearly, I'm not, telling tales out of school. Hey, everyone, spoiler alert, Marco Rubio wants to be president. And Marco Rubio thinks, as many people in Washington, D.C. believe, that if you're Secretary of State, that helps you become president. I mean, look what it did for Hillary Clinton. You get my point. Okay, it worked for Thomas Jefferson, right? So number one, I don't think becoming the Secretary of Defense is necessarily your Willy Wonka golden ticket to the White House. That's number one. Number two, I hope I don't offend anybody here, but you come here because I tell it like it is. The fact of the matter is, everybody who starts the Trump administration as a member of Trump's cabinet will not all be there at the end of the Trump administration. And many of them will be gone, not out of their own choosing. In other words, I believe that Donald Trump is going to fire some members of his cabinet. Why do I believe that? Well, because I have a memory. And the last time Trump was president, there were people who did not work out, and they got fired, not least of which the Secretary of Defense. In fact, I think that of all the positions in the incoming Trump cabinet, the Secretary of Defense quite possibly could be dismissed for one reason or another, especially if it's somebody who doesn't have a great working relationship with Donald Trump, somebody like Ron DeSantis. I mean, the second that Donald Trump believes that Ron DeSantis is doing something politically to separate himself from Trump, DeSantis is out of there, right? So I really, really don't think that this DeSantis thing is the real deal. I think DeSantis is too smart for that. I think Trump is too smart for that. By the way, if Ron DeSantis does become Secretary of Defense, that's the best thing J.D. Vance can think of, right? Probably. All right, let's move on from that, because this whole story about Ron DeSantis also has some underlying drama to it. Sean Davis, he's the co-founder and now CEO of The Federalist. He lays it out. Sources with direct knowledge tell me this story, that's the DeSantis story, is nonsense and indicate they've had enough with games being played on Hegseth's defense nomination by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa and Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Okay, interesting. One source says Graham, who has never found a war he didn't want other people to fight, spent the weekend crying to Trump about Hegseth, while Ernst has been running an inside the Beltway campaign to knife Hegseth. That is true. I've heard that from very good sources on Capitol Hill as well. In fact, most of those sources say, forget about this DeSantis noise. Ernst is the one who wants to be SecDef. Ernst is trying to work behind the scenes to spike Hegseth, partly because she wants to be SecDef, also partly because she really takes issue with Pete Hegseth's position on women in combat. And let's be clear, it's not women in the military, it's women in combat. Senator Joni Ernst, who is a military veteran herself, has been an outspoken supporter of women in combat. She doesn't like that Hegseth took the opposite position, number one. And number two, she doesn't actually want to come out against his nomination, so she's working behind the scenes. Sean Davis continues. Sources say the Wall Street Journal article touting DeSantis is a key part of the Ernst Graham operation to torpedo Hegseth because of his foreign policy views and opposition to endless, pointless wars. All right, so this is the second way that they're trying to defend Pete Hegseth right now. First, attack the media because of their underhanded use of anonymous sources and the underhanded way they manipulated Pete Hegseth's mom on this email, number one. Number two, go after the deep state Leviathan rhinos who love the current military war policies that Donald Trump ran against, and make this not about Pete Hegseth, not about him personally, not about these rumors, not about his behavior. No, this is really an attack on Donald Trump's America First policies with regard to military intervention overseas. And if you're going to allow Pete Hegseth to go down, then you're really allowing those people to win, and it will undermine Donald Trump's ability to move his agenda along at the Pentagon. That's a lot of what's going on behind the scenes here. That's what you're seeing play out. And the strategy, I think, is very smart. The strategy is very smart. You're not even defending Pete Hegseth. You're attacking the media and you're attacking the warmongers in the Republican Party. Now, whether it works or not, I couldn't tell you. But I think that's really what's going on behind the scenes. I think it's what's really going on with this fight. Listen, Pete Hegseth does have stuff in his background, but it's certainly nothing that anyone in the media, or for that matter, anyone in the military, well, not anyone, but a lot of people don't have in their background. Let's not forget something. Lloyd Austin, our current Secretary of Defense, was confirmed by the Senate on a vote of 93-2, with 5 senators not voting. The only 2 no votes that he got was from Republican Senator Lee from Utah and Senator Hawley from Missouri. Everyone else, 95 other senators, including over 40 Republicans, voted to confirm Lloyd Austin. Lloyd Austin was a 4-star general in the Army. Lloyd Austin had the perfect resume. Lloyd Austin didn't have anybody saying that he had misbehaved or that he had drank too much or any of the things that you're hearing about Pete Hegseth, right? None of those rumors. No, he was the perfect candidate. And how has he performed as Secretary of Defense? How'd that Afghanistan pullout go? And by the way, let's not forget that Lloyd Austin was literally MIA for weeks last year when he underwent a medical procedure without telling his commander-in-chief or anybody in the chain of command. He didn't even tell the Deputy Secretary of Defense, who was off vacationing in Puerto Rico when literally no one was running the Pentagon. And yet all those Republicans supported him for Secretary of Defense. So don't tell me about credentials. Don't tell me about resumes. Don't tell me about problems with Pete Hegseth. If you oppose Pete Hegseth right now based on anonymous sources saying mean things about him, well, you're really opposing Donald Trump's policies and what he wants to do to fix the Pentagon. That's what's really going on here. And it might work. It just might work. Moments ago on The View, Charlemagne the God. Why do we have to call him that? What's his real name? This nationally syndicated radio host who tries to put himself out there as the spokesperson for young Black America. He appeared on The View, and the subject of hypocrisy with Joe Biden's Hunter Biden pardon came up. And then a throwdown happened with Whoopi Goldberg on one side, Sonny Hostin on the other, and they were all going against Charlemagne. But he held his own. Let's take a look.
Let me ask you something that's going around right now. A lot of this conversation about President Biden getting criticized from both sides of the aisle for pardoning his son Hunter after repeatedly saying he would never do it. And a lot of people are saying that it's hypocritical, et cetera, as if the other side doesn't do it. But what's your reaction to it?
I mean, I think all of the criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time. And, they act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy and they were saying that, nobody's above the law, but they were speaking about him, that's what they were running on. So when he kept saying things like, nobody's above the law, I respect, the jury's decision in regards to my son, he didn't believe that. But he didn't have to volunteer that lie to begin with.
All right. Now, Whoopi Goldberg is going to jump in here for a second and start fighting with him about this. And listen, this is an argument that they've been having earlier this week. We've already discussed, but I just want to emphasize something that Charlemagne does, because he is 100% right there. We talked about this all during this past year's presidential campaign. When Biden was running for president and when Kamala Harris was running for president, the last thing they did, the thing they never did, the thing that was completely absent from their campaigns was standing in front of the American people saying, I have a great track record. The last 4 years have been fantastic. The economy is humming along. National security has never been better. The border is secure. Crime is down everywhere. And we have great respect and standing in world affairs as there's peace and prosperity in our time. See, they never said any of that. They couldn't say anything like that. They couldn't say that the economy was great. They couldn't say that America was more prosperous. They couldn't say that they had even brought peace and unity and healed the nation after divisive years. All that stuff that they said they were going to do. They couldn't say any of that. They had a horrible record to run on. They couldn't make the case as to why you should vote for them. All they could do was say Trump is awful. Trump is a felon. Trump is a criminal. Trump is a racist. Trump is a sexist. Trump is a fascist, and he's Hitler, right? The entire campaign was attacking Donald Trump. And as they attacked Donald Trump, especially with the lawfare, especially with the 37 felony convictions and all of that crap, they had to also preen. They also had to sanctimoniously said, no one is above the law. We are Democrats and we respect the rule of law. That's what makes us different. If for nothing else, vote for us because we embrace the rule of law and the sanctity of the Justice Department. It is pristine and it is perfect. Trump is trashing it and saying that it's politicized, but it's not. In fact, we are so pristine and we have such a respect for the law that even with Hunter Biden's legal problems, Joe Biden will not use his pardon power to get him off the hook because that's how much we respect the rule of law. Now, all Charlemagne just said there was, listen, all he had to do was say nothing. He didn't have to say anything about a pardon, but no. He stood up there and act holier than thou, and he says, this is who we are, and this is what makes us different. That's the crux of his argument, and he's 100% right. Now, listen to Whoopi Goldberg. Watch her completely miss the point and equivocate all of it and basically prove the point. Because her entire argument is, well, they're corrupt, so it's about time we did it too. Watch.
Stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed
You
his
really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of
No,
a sudden?
I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over. And this is just my feeling, because at some point you get to the place where you just go, so I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out. They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground.
Listen,
they don't have to do that.
I'm a Democrat. Tell me what the moral high ground is.
The moral high ground is nobody's above the law. I respect what the jurors are saying. He don't have to do that.
So we're mad at him because he changed his.
Oh, no. By the way, I'm not mad at him pardoning
But
Hunter
you sound
Biden.
like you're
No.
If I can get in on this, I actually think it went further, and this is one thing we really disagree on. Joe Biden made a point of saying we stand by our institutions
Yes, I
and the
understand all that.
impartiality of the Department of Justice.
Yes.
Democrats ran on that. The same DOJ indicted Hunter Biden. How we shouldn't be saying it's corrupt like Donald Trump does. But then in his statement pardoning Hunter Biden, he says that it was a political pursuit by his own Department of Justice.
Can you explain to me why it is that when Joe Biden does something, everybody clutches their pearls? He's wrong.
Nobody
he lied.
criticized Donald Trump.
So again, I hate to repeat myself, but apparently it needs to be repeated. You know, how come when Joe does this, everyone gets upset, but when Trump does it, it's okay? Well, you have literally spent the last 8 years screaming at the top of your lungs that Trump is a corrupt fascist criminal. And all Joe Biden has now just done is said, well, yeah, me too. And you seem to be fine with it. Why is that hard for her to understand? Well, I'll tell you why it's hard for her to understand. Because if you go back and watch what she just said, the entire basis and foundation of her morality was revealed. She said, you know, you're walking the straight and narrow and everybody else is getting away with it. So you kind of understand why they go ahead and break the rules too. Well, that's an incredible view of morality. First of all, it's completely warped and a lie because Joe Biden is a career crooked politician. It just so happens that his son got caught with his hand in the cookie jar this one time. There's a reason why that pardon goes all the way back to 2014, right? But let's buy the premise for a second. Let's accept it. That Joe Biden has been pure as the virgin, pristine snow for the last 50 years. And finally, after seeing Donald Trump and Republicans get away with it, he decided he wanted to get away with it too. Well, is that morality? Is it really? Is that what you say to your kids? Kids, I don't want you stealing. All right. It not only is it against the law, but it's against the 10 commandments. And even if you can get away with it, even if no one's watching, well, God is watching. And that's why you don't do it. because it's an offense, and it's an offense to the Lord. So don't do it. See, that's morality. But what Whoopi Goldberg just articulated, what she would tell her kid is, all right, if you're at the store and everyone's shoplifting and they all get away with it, you can go ahead and shoplift too, because you shouldn't be the only one who follows the rules. That's her morality. And when you understand, as she just articulated, that that is her perspective, her worldview on morality, then everything else makes sense, I suppose. All right, let's see this go out, because they actually get pretty nasty here. Let's watch.
More than me or Charlamagne
No,
God.
I'm sorry. Yeah, people have criticized it more. I've criticized it more. We've all criticized it more, but you're missing my question.
Okay.
My question is, what is it that makes people flip out with Joe, but we don't have the same kind of thing?
Well, I don't think people are flipping out with Joe. I think Democrats are flipping out with Joe because Democrats believe that they don't represent what he's currently representing. But that's just not true. That's why I say they stand on this moral high ground that simply does not exist. And I think this is also the problem when we pick sides, right? We've turned political parties into teams. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. Ain't nobody more delusional than me, right? Okay? I feel like we're going to the Super Bowl every year, but I'm not delusional. Well, no, that is delusional. But when it comes... But when it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, right, if you say you're a Democrat, if you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything.
I'm an independent.
Yes, but that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
Why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? And why can't Republicans say when Republicans are wrong?
I'll tell you when Democrats are wrong.
So you don't think Joe Biden is wrong?
No, I don't. And can I just point this out to you? The president has a part in power, right?
So we're going to let Sonny Hostin jump in here, but this is an interesting commentary on the media too, and I do want to chime in. It's funny. I feel like I do. In fact, I just criticized Republicans just now. I criticized Joni Ernst and Lindsey Graham, and I criticized Republican senators who are backing off of Pete Hegseth right now, considering the stuff that's in their closets and things like that. I think, but this comes up all the time, and it's completely disingenuous. Listen, we all do our shows, and I don't hold it against the view that they're all completely lock solid in favor of defending anything a Democrat does and spend all their time just attacking Republicans. If they decided that that's how they get ratings and that's how they can sell advertising, fine, God bless them. Just maybe you should change the show from The View. Well, actually, I guess it is an appropriate name because there's only one view allowed at that table. But stop pretending like they've got, multiple perspectives on things. That is the disingenuousness of it that I don't like. But this is a canard. This whole thing is like, well, if you were really honest, you'd spend as much time criticizing one side as you do criticizing the other. For people who are just getting to know me or don't know me, I came into this world because of the late, great Andrew Breitbart. There he is, always looking over my shoulder. You need to read his book, Righteous Indignation. It's a fantastic book. That's how I got here. Andrew Breitbart brought me into this world about 15 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, writing and radio and video streaming, etc. And Andrew always used to get faced with that. Why your site is just criticizing Democrats and liberals all the time? Why do you do that all the time? Why do you do it all the time? And he would say, there are hundreds of websites that do nothing but attack Republicans. ABC, CBS, and NBC do nothing but attack Republicans and defend Democrats. MSNBC and CNN do nothing but defend Democrats and attack Republicans. Fox News, sadly, spent a lot of their time attacking Republicans, or at least the Republicans that don't fit into their club. The Washington Post, the New York Times, on and on and on and on. Every single late night television show and comedy show, Saturday Night Live, every single major pop culture media outlet, all of academia except for Hillsdale College, major sports leagues. Now, you can go on and on and on. Every single major institution in America attacks Republicans and defends Democrats and leftist ideology. As Rush Limbaugh used to say, we don't need to provide equal time. We are equal time. So it's a canard to jump up there and say, well, unless you attack both sides equally, you're just as corrupt as everybody else. I'd love to hold his radio show, by the way, up to that standard. So I just wanted to interject and say, listen, if The View wants to be who they are, let The View be who they are. My argument is not with The View, by the way. My argument was with ABC News and all of the affiliate stations that have broadcast licenses through the FCC where they're supposed to provide equal time, and they never do. That's the real problem. All right, let's let Sonny host him make the final argument here, because I love seeing them all fight amongst themselves.
Hey,
I didn't say you were ridiculous, Ms. Goldberg.
Yeah,
I would never. I said that. I just think that.
Think about
Come over
it.
and give
Just
me a
think about it this way. Just very quickly, can you reframe it in this way? Think about it maybe in this way. The president has the ultimate pardon power. Every president has done this, right?
Yeah.
And so people are saying is that Joe Biden is now a liar, as opposed to Joe Biden is someone who now knows that the person that is going to be in the White House is on a revenge tour and his son is on an enemies list. And so he is using his rightful power, his rightful political power, to pardon his son. Now, is that a lie, or is that perhaps being pragmatic, having a change of opinion, as opposed to the president-elect who has lied almost 40,000 times during his first term?
Well, I can't say what it is because
So
I'm not in
the moral high ground. Like, what's the faux outrage?
Neither one of them have the moral high ground. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. But when you are a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, you refuse to be objective about the other party. Like it's like we're watching them do something wrong, but we're making excuses for it. We watch Republicans do things wrong and they make excuses for it. Why can't we just all be objective and call it what it is?
Because it's not balanced.
It's not the same.
But wait, there's more. There's more. We gotta go. We're coming right back.
You're right. It's not balanced. It's certainly not balanced in the media, and I'll give you that. It's really amazing that Sonny Hostin said, well, maybe you can think of it this way. In other words, maybe you can spin it the way I'm about to spin it. And the spin, of course, is that Donald Trump's going to come in here and he's going to weaponize the Justice Department, as if it's not weaponized right now in one direction. He's going to weaponize the Justice Department, and they're going to come after me, and they're going to come after my son, and they're going to come after my family. So I have to give him a pardon because Trump's about to attack him unfairly and politically and ruin his life just because he's my son, which is a compelling argument that Sonny Hostin just made. Here's the biggest problem with it. Even Joe Biden didn't make that argument. In his letter explaining his pardon, he said that it was the current Justice Department that was politicized. It was the current Justice Department and Merrick Garland and David Weiss, the U.S. attorney out of Delaware, who went after his son politically because his last name was Biden. He didn't make the case that this is a prophylactic against Trump coming in. He said that he's already been attacked by the current Justice Department. He also said, by the way, that he was pardoning him because of the tax and gun laws, because he was intoxicated and abusing substances at the time. One problem with that, the plea deal that Hunter Biden signed on the tax fraud charges that he pled guilty to, he maintained in writing to a court of law that he was actually clean and sober, and he wasn't affected by drugs or alcohol when he cheated on his taxes. So we still have to get a resolution on that. It doesn't matter, though, because he's got his pardon. And boy, oh boy, Sonny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies at The View, they're going to keep defending Joe for doing this no matter what, even against a friendly like Charlemagne. They're going to defend him to their dying day. They're even offering defenses Joe Biden won't offer. Man, I wish I had friends like that. I'm kidding. I have friends like that. Well, I have one friend like that, Kevin. Kevin, would you defend me like that?
Of course, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's right. That's right. You better say, of course. Imagine being Scott Jennings for a minute. Imagine being Scott Jennings and having to show up on a panel on CNN nightly to have to fight back against the most outrageous fever swamp, horrific apocalyptic fantasies about who Donald Trump is. Well, that's exactly what he has to do, but he does it so well. And I want you to see the latest from last night. Take a look.
I don't want to be bringing back waterboarding. I don't want to be a country that tortures people, especially if we're the kind of country that's going to be using the military against our own citizens. This kind of thing concerns me.
What do you mean use against our own citizens?
I'm talking about
you
sending...
said blue states behave. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about sending the military into blue states to make them behave.
What
getting Gavin Newsom under control, getting J.P. Pritzker under control.
What are you
making
talking
sure
about? What do you
talking
mean? Like
about
sitting
things
into
that
the
Donald
state
Trump has
capitol
actually said.
to commandeer the state government?
I mean, I hope not, but I'm definitely, he's definitely
Trump
talked about that. I don't know
has
why you're
talked
acting like
about
you've never
using
heard
the
this
military
before.
to suppress in the Black Lives Matter era those
Yes.
protests in the street.
He was there himself.
Actually,
I just make sure I understand your position, that you believe Donald Trump is going to use the military to set up effectively like coups in state capitals of states that he didn't win.
I think you're taking it a step or two.
No, she said
far.
make blue states behave, and she also said round up immigrants. That's not true.
Well,
It's deport illegal immigrants.
Scott,
I think you just need to be a
Scott, I
little
don't know why
precise
you're
about these
acting.
attacks.
No,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Hold on. I mean, look, I think you're right. Let's be precise. Trump has wanted to use the military to do things domestically that actually the military is not allowed to do. I think that's the point that she's making.
Like what?
Like deport illegal immigrants. That is actually not a function of the military.
The military can absolutely be used to work with local officials to provide military resources, but working with other parts of the federal government and local officials. We already send the National Guard to the border.
Not against the will of the local officials or the will of the state government. We have a federalist government here.
The military is not supposed to take up arms against American citizens.
They're
Period.
not. You keep
And
saying
so-
that. This is about illegal immigration. You all keep saying American citizens.
Well,
It's
how do
about
we
illegal
know whether the
immigration.
people are illegal or not?
Well, when we
know
have,
after they're shot.
we have 1.6.
We know after they die.
We have 1.6 million people in this country
Scott,
who've
you're
already
onto
received
illegal immigration.
deportation
That's not
orders
the
from
point.
courts.
I want to jump in here. There's more to this, and Jennings does a great job. But you see what's happening here, and let's just explain this one more time. If you're just joining us, any person in this country who is here illegally and faces a deportation order, they have gotten that order from a judge. It's already been adjudicated. They shouldn't be here, and they must legally be deported. Now, there is literally nothing unconstitutional or problematic or illegal in any way whatsoever for local law enforcement to be aided and assisted with military resources, either through the National Guard or what have you, to accomplish that goal. 100%. And some they say, well, you can't take up arms against American citizens. Okay, let me say it again. These are not only citizens of a foreign country that are here, but they're here illegally, and a judge in a court of law has authorized a deportation order. All right? So they are completely out of their minds, out of their depth, and ignorant, not just of current affairs, but of the law itself. And Scott Jennings has to deal with this. Scott Jennings has to deal with this on all sides. And he does it well. But he even has to deal with it from the host, Abby Phillips. More on her in a minute. But let's watch the rest of this unfold here. But just so you know, they're completely wrong. They're completely wrong. But you hear this everywhere. This is just one representation of what you hear from every major news outlet. They're all repeating the same lie to scare you. They want you to be scared.
It's always back to illegal immigration with people who support Donald Trump. It's always back to illegal immigration. But that's not the only thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about the American people. We're talking about taking up arms against them with a military that's supposed to be protecting them.
This is not right. You cannot say Donald Trump is sending the military to
We
round
didn't
up.
say
That's what he said.
That is what he
That's
is
what he
saying,
said.
Scott.
That's not what I'm saying.
Totally false.
He said that.
Totally false.
That's what he said.
Scott, Trump.
We're
Trump
in the
has-
fever swamps, Abby.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
What is your dispute here? I'm not even really
Because they're
understanding
saying
it
that he's sending the military to shoot or round up American citizens. Not
We did not
true.
say shoot.
I think
people,
the issue.
Scott.
The issue.
You said
Scott,
take. He just said take up arms.
I said
Scott, why are you acting like Donald Trump
let me
has
ask
not
Elliot
said
here.
this?
I mean,
Look, I did say take up arms
Hold on,
because when
Solomon.
you send the army in, that's what they're there
Solomon.
for.
Elliot,
And he also said, by the way, how do you know if they're illegal immigrants or not? After they're dead, you'll sort it out. So he is talking about shooting American citizens. All right. So what did we just witness? And what is their, because they keep saying, and they seem pretty adamant and pretty confident that yes, in fact, Donald Trump said that he's going to send in the military to take up arms against American citizens. Well, who's right and who's wrong? Well, as usual, it's a little more complicated than just, yes, he said that, or no, he didn't say that. As usual, Donald Trump said something that is completely right and normal and valid. But the left, trying to have a political weapon against Donald Trump, twists what he says in such a way as to terrify American citizens. So let's tell you exactly what's going on here. We turn here to radio talk show host Eric Erickson. He actually, this is going to be big enough for everybody to see. He wrote a very long post on X going after Abby Phillips and CNN about this. Let's read what he had to say. And then Abby Phillips, for her credit, responded to this, and we'll show you what her response is. The tagline for Newsnight on CNN is Abby Phillips delivers a smart, sharp approach to the day's biggest stories. I have been invited to be on the show several times and have had scheduling conflicts that made it impossible for me to travel for the show. I'm glad. This morning, I told my assistant to politely decline all further invites. He has an assistant? I don't have an assistant. Do I get an assistant? The show is an embarrassment, and CNN should be embarrassed to air it. By the way, it should be pointed out, Eric Erickson, no fan of Donald Trump, sort of led the charge of the Never Trumpers back in 2016. I'll be honest, I don't know what his disposition is on Trump right now, but hardly a huge supporter of the former and future president. All right, Eric Erickson. It's clearly not designed to take a sharp or smart approach to any news story. Instead, it's designed to generate viral clips to boost ratings, even if from people hate watching. I continue to be baffled by the clip of those around the table ignorant of the Ferguson effect that seems to suggest police gave up enforcing laws in inner cities after the Ferguson riots. We showed you that clip from about a month and a half ago, remember? Abby Phillips herself wrote about it at the Washington Post and acted as if she were hearing Aramaic spoken when Ryan Girdusky brought it up. Last night, the roundtable again piled on Scott Jennings because the panelists claimed Donald Trump wanted to use the American military to round up American citizens. Trump has not said that. His comments have been about illegal aliens. But even, again, Abby Phillips, who regularly likes to correct conservative panelists, including Scott Jennings, seemed absolutely confused about basic facts that never penetrate the left-wing echo chamber. In fact, Abby Phillips again tried to correct Scott Jennings and again was wrong. She went back to Trump's consideration of calling out the National Guard after the 2020 riots. But that was something Tom Cotton advocated for in the New York Times that Trump did not actually do. She then had the audacity to claim credentialism for the progressive panelists who claimed Donald Trump wanted to send the military after American citizens, something he has not said. They, after all, were lawyers. I'm sorry, but the show is a sign of CNN's drift into the fever swamps. Dude, where have you been? CNN's been like swimming around, doing the backstroke, doing the deep dive in the fever swamps, pal. I want no part of it, and the show's existence makes me question the direction of the whole network as it struggles to find its footing. Newsnight is discrediting to the whole network. I've made the editorial decision on my own radio show to stop airing clips of the program because I do not want to give it any attention. I think the show is a cry for help from CNN, and if they think this show is a good idea, they need no help. They need to rebuild it. Paging John Malone. All right, well, we'll continue showing you clips because I think it frankly informs you exactly where things are over there on cable news and broadcast news and revalidates your choice to find alternative modes of news information, perspective, context, and analysis. And we want to reward you for that. All right, so Abby Phillips decided to respond, and this is very insightful and fascinating. Eric Erickson, I take it you did not actually watch the show last night. There's a lot to address in this mostly incorrect tweet. What was incorrect about it? You just saw the clip. But I'll start with the most simple one. The discussion last night was in part about whether Trump has threatened to use the military to address domestic problems. Well, yes, actually, that's not what it was. They weren't saying that Donald Trump threatened to use the military to address domestic problems. They said that Donald Trump threatened to use the military to round up American citizens. And if I remember correctly, to go into blue states who are behaving badly. Isn't that the original charge? I don't know, Abby Phillip. Unlike you, we have access to your show. Let's take a look at what the original charge.
I don't want to be bringing back waterboarding. I don't want to be a country that tortures people, especially if we're the kind of country that's going to be using the military against our own citizens. This kind of thing concerns me.
What do you mean use against our own citizens?
I'm talking about
You
sending.
said blue states behave. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about sending the military into blue states to make them behave.
Okay, so sending military into blue states to make them behave. Abby Phillip said that the real discussion was about what now? Trump using the military to address domestic problems, yes, involving U.S. citizens. I'll be honest, if the discussion was about Trump threatening to use the military to address domestic problems, I think that would have been a very fine conversation, but it wasn't. It was that woman with her hair pulled back very tight on her scalp, saying that Trump was going to send in the military to blue states to make them behave. The answer is very clearly yes. Here's a Trump quote from 2020 about the racial justice protest. Whoa, hold on there. There's a tell. The racial justice protests. Is that what those were in June of 2020? Were they fiery but mostly peaceful racial justice protests, Abby? Is that what they were? Racial justice protests. They were riots. Cities burnt. Part of Washington, D.C. downtown is still gutted 4 years later, with businesses never returning because of the, what was it again? Racial justice protests. Part of Seattle and part of Portland were literally cordoned off and taken over as autonomous zones where the police officers were not allowed in lest they be harmed and killed by armed militias. But those were racial justice protests. She makes it sound like Martin Luther King was walking arm in arm with people singing, "We shall overcome." That's not what I remember, Abby. I remember cities burning. I remember people dying. I remember blood in the streets. I remember looting, windows broken, livelihoods ruined, small businesses devastated. Racial justice protests. Okay, here's the Trump quote. Quote, if a city or state refuses to take the actions necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them, unquote. It's what Lyndon Johnson did in the 60s, by the way. It's what presidents have done. Going back to George Washington, by the way. Abby Phillip, you should look up the Whiskey Rebellion. Look up what the Whiskey Rebellion was and find out what George Washington and his aide-de-camp, Alexander Hamilton, who at the time was Secretary of the Treasury, did in the face of the Whiskey Rebellion. Honestly, it drives me insane. I'm just a regular guy. I don't have a journalism degree. I don't even have a history degree. Spoiler alert, I don't have a degree at all. I didn't go to college. But I know more about current events and American history and the Constitution and the law than people who are sitting on a set in primetime television on a cable news network do, whose sole job it is to engage in conversations about these very things. You can argue that he didn't do it, which he didn't, by the way. In fact, I think he should have. Had Donald Trump utilized military resources to shore up peace on the streets in certain cities during the 2020 riots, he probably would have won re-election by the landslide he just won. You can argue that he didn't do it, not that he didn't threaten to do it. Take a breath, calm down. The thing about Scott Jennings is that he's willing to engage in conversation and debate. I'm sorry that we can't say the same for you. Have a great day. Okay, Abby is mostly butthurt because Eric Erickson won't come on our show. Neither will I, by the way. Don't ask. All right, so I guess the big argument now is Donald Trump is going to call out the military against American citizens in blue states. Well, there's a great way to avoid such a thing from happening, and that is governors of those blue states actually enforcing the law, keeping the peace, and protecting innocent Americans from losing their businesses and at times losing their lives like they did in 2020. There's nothing unconstitutional about it in any way whatsoever. And it's not turning the military against American citizens. It's utilizing military resources to protect innocent Americans because those charged with that responsibility refuse to do so. And one other thing that's really telling about that conversation you just had and the fact that this is now a major issue, listen to this very carefully. Kamala Harris made this argument in the last election. Joe Biden made this argument in the last election. Every Democrat and every media figure trying to defeat Donald Trump and make the case for Kamala Harris used this argument in the last election endlessly. And the American people, we rejected it. The fact that this is all they've got now tells me that they've got Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Joe Biden is still president of the United States. I know. Who knew? He fled the United States of America after leaving a wide-ranging, broad, sweeping pardon for his son and all of the legal activities he was involved in for the last 10 plus years, hopped on a plane and flew to Africa. And representing the United States of America, he sat with African leaders in Angola and promptly fell asleep. I wish I was joking. Take a look.
With the U.S. in support of the development of the Lobito Corridor. Tanzania views the Lobito Corridor as an integral.
Whoa, do we need a new clip of this, Michael? Kevin?
Nope, we're good.
Do we have another version of this?
Nope, it's totally fine.
All right.
Part of a broader strategy to enhance connectivity in Africa. We also appreciate the fact that the implementation of the project will provide important opportunities for Africa's development in sectors such as agriculture, renewable energy, digital transformation, trade and logistics.
All right, so we don't need to hear all of the things because I don't want to put you to sleep either. I mean, honestly, part of me is like, can you blame the poor guy that he has to sit through this? Let's move it along, dude. But look at him. What do you think? Is he just resting his eyes? Is he resting his eyes, or is he just concentrating really hard on the in-depth details of what's going on here at this little meeting, this summit? You can't say that he's trying to focus really hard on the English translation that they're feeding into his ears because dude is talking in English. He's speaking English. So, oh, look, oh my God, his head's gonna knot. Oh, there he goes. He's starting to drift. Do you see him drifting? He's drifting to the left. He's drifting to the left. I mean, Joe Biden's been drifting to the left his entire political career. That's the end of that clip. But yeah, he basically fell asleep because America's back, baby. Because finally the rest of the world respects us because of this guy. When he's not crapping his pants or wandering aimlessly on a field in Italy, he's going to Angola and falling asleep in front of African leaders. How do you think they take that? Do you think Xi Jinping, when he goes to Africa to let them know that he's going to build new superhighways for them and football stadiums for them, do you think he falls asleep? Probably not. Probably not. But there's Joe Biden. And when he's not sleeping, by the way, he's telling stories about how much he loves choo-choo trains because we're giving them billions of dollars to build a choo-choo train. And Joe Biden wanted to make sure that the president knew that he loves choo-choo trains. Be proud, America. Be proud.
Mr. President, I'm coming back to ride on the train all the way from end to end. As they say, when we on the Senate floor of the United States Senate, excuse a point of personal privilege. I've ridden an awful lot on trains. I commute every day 212 miles a day on Amtrak from Washington to my hometown of Wilmington, Delaware as a senator. And so I like trains a lot. So I'm coming back. You're stuck with me.
I like trains. I like trains a lot. We're supposed to be so proud that this man represents us internationally. We were supposed to be afraid of Donald Trump becoming the commander-in-chief and the head of state and representing us internationally. We were told that he was an embarrassment. Remember that? Remember that argument? You can't let Donald Trump be the president of the United States and represent us in international forums. He's embarrassing. He'll embarrass us. He's an embarrassment. So instead, we need this guy.
And 12 miles a day on Amtrak from Washington to my hometown of Wilmington, Delaware as a senator. And so I like trains a lot.
All the smart people in Washington, all the elitists, all the credentialed class, they'll tell you that this guy's a genius, that foreign affairs is his bailiwick, that this has been his passion his entire life, even though he's been on the wrong side of everything. Remember when Ronald Reagan stood at the Brandenburg Gates in Germany and said those famous words, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Within 2 years, the Soviet Union had collapsed. And then a year later, yes, in fact, that wall did get torn down. Gorbachev didn't tear it down. The people of Germany tore it down. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? That night, and again, please Google it, look me up, fact check me. If I'm not telling you the truth, please say so in the comments, publicly shame me. The very night that Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, Senator Joe Biden was on CNN criticizing Ronald Reagan's foreign policy, saying that he was wrong. In fact, Ronald Reagan wrote about it in his diary, called out Joe Biden personally in his diary for attacking Ronald Reagan while he was in Germany, saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Look it up. He's been wrong about everything. But the credentialed class, you know, the same people who say that Donald Trump will embarrass us overseas and that this person or that person is not qualified to be in Donald Trump's cabinet, they say this guy is eminently qualified to be president, that he's eminently qualified to shore up our foreign policy overseas. Don't ever believe experts in Washington, D.C. Ever. Meanwhile, when he wasn't embarrassing us by falling asleep or waxing poetic about how much he loves trains, he was giving the people of Angola $1 billion. He gave them $1 billion because they've had some weather problems that Joe Biden thinks is linked to you driving an SUV. And he thinks that we're in some way responsible for that. And so we have to give them $1 billion.
You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. And today, I'm announcing over $1 billion in new humanitarian support for Africans displaced from homes by historic droughts and food insecurity. We know African leaders and citizens are seeking more than just aid. You seek investment. So the United States is expanding our relationship all across Africa, from assistance to aid, to investment to trade, moving from patrons to partners to help bridge the infrastructure gap. I was told, by the way, when I got elected, I could never get an infrastructure bill passed.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody could really understand half of what he was muttering and mumbling through, but we did hear the $1 billion in aid. And we also heard this part at the beginning. Do you remember?
You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do.
It's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. He's over there doing the right thing by the people of Angola who are suffering right now because of some sort of weather calamity. Luckily, of course, here in the United States of America, we've got it good. We're the wealthiest nation in the world, and nowhere in our country is anyone suffering because of some sort of weather calamity, right? Hey, let's turn the channel over to CBS News and see what they're talking about.
Snow and biting cold. December delivering a different type of storm to hurricane-ravaged western North Carolina.
What do you need?
Just people to come check on us. So,
His home destroyed. Steve Crowell showed us the tent he lived in for weeks.
Is this your food in boxes?
Yeah, people drop stuff off that we already have, and most of it's expired food.
This is how hundreds of people are still living in western North Carolina in campers and in tents amid bitterly cold temperatures.
Shauna Levine's family with 7 children has been staying in this shelter, a former Gold's Gym, for 2 months.
How do you think your kids are doing?
They're struggling, but they're managing it well. Definitely has affected them.
Dozens of people who lost their homes are staying here, but the lease is up. They have to be out by the end of the month.
We are refusing to let these people be out in the street. We're gonna find a place for each and every person.
That's fantastic. I just want to jump in here because it's great to see somebody in authority who's jumping in there and trying to help these people out. What division of the federal government do they work for? Is that FEMA? Is that Health and Human Services? What's it say here? Western Carolina Rescue Ministries. Western Carolina Rescue Ministries. That's not the federal government. That's not FEMA. That's not Joe Biden's administration coming to help people. That's That's some right-wing religious fanatic. I'm guessing the Western Carolina Rescue Ministries doesn't get any federal funding. All right. Sorry about that. My bad. I thought maybe FEMA was doing it. Okay, let's continue with the report.
The need across Western North Carolina is staggering.
Would you like a soup and sandwich?
Volunteers at this free food site in hard-hit Swannanoa are cooking 800 meals a week.
This is 100% people taking care of people.
Chris Smith has volunteered every day since the storm hit.
No conditions, no politics. It's just, there's hungry people. We need to feed them.
Relief centers with washing machines, Wi-Fi, and hot showers are a lifeline. Amid the daily struggles, there is progress.
Okay, Isaac.
Levine and her family will finally leave the shelter this week. Not a permanent home, but 2 camper vans to be shared by 9.
How has this experience changed your family?
I think it has made us closer. Families have been torn apart, and we still have one another.
Here in Swannanoa, along the river, it's more like a campground than a neighborhood. The homes here, they are either gone or unlivable, left behind the debris and campers and tents people are now calling their homes. Nora.
All right. Well, listen, I do want to give credit to CBS News for at least covering this story. I appreciate it. That's horrible to see. American citizens affected by the hurricane this far out with snow falling, sub-freezing temperatures are living in campers and tents, and there's no help around. And I want to remind you, President Biden was just in Angola to give them $1 billion for relief due to some weather event that he thinks is connected to climate change. And why did we do that again? Remind me, Joe Biden, why did we do that?
You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do.
Oh, because it's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. Can we just take one more peek as to what's going on here in the wealthiest nation in the world, the nation that doesn't get $1 billion from Joe Biden as he's flying around in the final days of his presidency?
To parts of Western North Carolina seeing their first winter weather of the season. But many of the areas seeing snow have not fully recovered from Hurricane Helene, and the conditions that people are living in, well, let's just say less than optimal. Steve Harrigan on the ground in Swannanoa, North Carolina, just east of Asheville with the latest. Steve?
John, first snowstorm here underway, and these freezing temperatures really the last thing people in Western North Carolina needed. If you see here, people were in these mobile homes. Those floors were torn out by the storm Helene 8 weeks ago. They were moved to hotels by FEMA. Those hotel vouchers for many people have run out, and now they are in tents after 8 weeks after this storm. And for families with small children, it is not an easy transition.
It's awful, especially with your kids. It feels like you're really letting them down. It's really cold. It's very uncomfortable.
A lot of people here have also lost their cars in addition to their homes. They were flooded out in the storm, and there's no money for many for porta-johns or bottled water. And when you talk to emergency workers here, they say the pace of recovery is just startlingly slow.
There's no sewer, there's no water, there's no power. There's your answer.
This is a storm that killed 103 people in North Carolina, caused $50 billion worth of damage, and 8 weeks later, you've got families in donated tents with wood-burning stoves. John, back to you.
Wow, that is a hardship. People living in tents as the snow is coming down. Steve Harrigan, more to this story.
Yeah, it is a hardship, that's for sure. But your president is Angola giving them $1 billion for what reason again, Joe? I just want to remember.
You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do.
It is the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. You know, one quick item on this that I just want to go back to the CBS News report. I don't know if you caught this or not. I remember this guy who feels abandoned by his government right now, wondering where the relief is, wondering where the aid is, wondering where that $1 billion is because it's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. I don't know if you caught this or not, but right after this shot on the inside of his house, they cut to the exterior. Take a look and see if you notice what I notice. Yeah, here comes that shot. There it is. Do you notice anything about this man's house? This man who is wondering where FEMA is? and where his assistance is and where his aid is here from the Biden administration. It's kind of sweet. He's got this little American flag because he still loves this country. But then look right below it on what would be his front lawn. He's got a Trump sign. I'm sure there's no connection there. I'm sure if he had a Harris wall sign out there, I'm sure he'd still be in the same desperate plight. I'm sure that FEMA isn't ignoring him because he had a Trump sign out there. I mean, we have documented cases, including emails by FEMA employees who say to avoid those houses that have Trump signs and not engage in talking to anyone there. But I'm sure that's not the case here. That would be wrong. I have no doubt that the fact that Western North Carolina in general voting overwhelmingly for Donald Trump and this person in particular supporting Donald Trump openly, I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that the Biden administration has virtually ignored these people and allowed them to freeze at night in tents. That he wouldn't do that. Joe Biden wouldn't do that. I mean, he's a good man with a great heart. And after all, he just told me in Angola.
You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do.
Yeah, he does the right thing whenever he can because, well, we're the wealthiest nation in the world. And those poor people in Angola, they're suffering from a weather-related event. And it's our fault. So we're going to give him $1 billion. You know, I liked him better when he was falling asleep in Africa. That is it today. Thank you so much for watching our show. Appreciate it. If you liked any of these segments today, we're going to be breaking them down and posting them individually on the very channel that you're watching right now, whatever platform you're on. So share them, especially this last one, because people, I don't think, know exactly that we're still suffering in Western North Carolina. People still need some help, and the president is nowhere to be found. Well, actually, he is somewhere. He's in Africa doing the right thing. But if you can share these videos, watch them, make sure you let people know about them, give them the thumbs up and add comments. That would do a lot to help spread the word about our show. Subscribe now. If you're watching us right now and you're not a subscriber, do so, please. We promise we will reward you for it with some great content going into the new year and the new administration. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.